Hola, hola, buenas tardes a ustedes. Bienvenidos. We're going to try this thing again. Had a couple of technical difficulties, but we are back in business. I'm back on this side of the planet. It's great to be back amongst you all. And so today, we're not going to waste any time here. We're going to get right into what we're talking about today, which is finding the keys on how to master Spanish grammar. Okay. So, without further ado, we're going to jump into some of the items that we have here for you all. And we want to make sure you share this out for those who you feel like need to know some key technique and strategies to help them uh, navigate the difficulties of Spanish grammar. So make sure you share this with those that you know who are looking to do better when it comes to organizing their thoughts into statements or questions in Spanish and understanding the nuances of the language. So, let's jump right into it. Let's bring up my notes so I can make sure I don't falter in giving you some direct and key information here. All right, so let me see if I can pull this together here. All right, we want to. Omar, muy buenas tardes a ustedes. Estoy súper alegre que estén aquí conmigo. So, once again, we want to know, why are we here? We're trying to find the keys to mastering Spanish grammar. And so here are some questions that you want to, ask yourself to see if this may be something for you. Do you struggle with conjugating verbs, right? Or maybe it's the sentence structures that frustrates you when it comes to Spanish, or maybe your biggest challenge is deciding the correct mood or the correct tense to use in Espanol. So that is what we're going to talk about today. Those are some of the things that are some major issues for people when they are learning Spanish. And so we're going to see if we can give you some strategies and some keys to help make that easier for you as you continue on your language learning journey. So we want to focus on the ways to dominate Spanish grammar. That's our biggest thing here. Okay. So bringing up the next slide here, we want to show you some common issues with Spanish grammar. All right, common issues with Spanish grammar. And I'm gonna see if I can't make this a little bigger. Is that gonna be big enough? Nah, let's go with right here. That's good enough for right now. So, some common examples or issues that we have with Spanish grammar. Um, the first one is going to be pronunciation. And so we want to know, how do you improve with your pronunciation in Espanol? All right. So one of the things that we like to focus upon in Spanish when we're dealing with difficulties in pronunciation of words, we want to focus in on your phonetics, right? You want to learn the phonetics and the basics of the Spanish alphabet, as well as the sounds that some of those letters make together. Okay. So that is one of the biggest things that you want to make sure you focus on. Learning the alphabet and learning the rules of certain letters in the alphabet. There are like 10 letters that you definitely need to know when it comes to having perfect pronunciation in Espanol. You can also, this is another, so you want to learn key number one, learn the phonetics, right? And learn the rules of the alphabet and how it applies in Spanish. Number two, we want to record and listen to ourselves when we're speaking Spanish. If you don't have a language partner to bounce your practice off of. You want to take the opportunities to record voice notes and then listen back to those voice notes. So it may be as simple as you know, reading out some statements or some questions that you may have written. Um, you can also create with your writing and then read that out loud if you're reading paragraphs and what have you. But the biggest thing is you want to have it's almost like having an audio journal, right? You want to be able to go back and say, hey, what is it that I was not pronouncing correctly and how do I fix that? And so you want to make sure you are listening to yourself or you have a language learning partner with you so they can say, hey, you want to pronounce it like this. Or they might give you some insight on how to remember, okay, certain things to pronounce correctly. Number three, numero tres, we want to be able to listen and repeat. Okay, listen and repeat. So, oftentimes you can find movies or radio shows or TV shows that you can listen to, and you want to repeat the intonation, the pronunciation, and what we talked about briefly before. Essentially, this is mimicry. So you want to be able to mimic those items and those words to help you with your pronunciation. Número cuatro, we want to engage often in conversation with native and fluent speakers. That is probably going to be the best way for you to work on your pronunciation. Talking and interacting with live people. And you want to do this as often as possible. A lot of us may feel like, oh, the anxiety levels are through the roof, things of that nature, but you don't want to worry about that. You want to go ahead and jump into it and just say, hey, I need to practice. Can you help me out here? Let me know what it is that I'm, pronouncing correctly or not pronouncing correctly. So make sure you are engaging in conversation with native and fluent Spanish speakers so that they can assist you along the way and you can become a better Spanish speaker. Trabalenguas. Trabalenguas, also known as, también conocida como tongue twisters, right? So, trabalenguas, and I'll put that in the chat for you so you can understand what I'm talking about here. Trabalenguas, all right, and I'll make sure we put that there so you can have this. You can search online or there are books with tongue twisters, but you can just type in, give me the top 50 tongue twisters, right, in Espanol. And so I'm going to put that in the chat, and then I'm also going to show it on the screen here. But you want to use tongue twisters to work the muscles of your mouth to get them used to the way you form your mouth for certain letters and certain, um, hey, no problems in your that is absolutely great. Go ahead and do your thing. But when it comes to tongue twisters, you definitely want to use those to work with your pronunciation skills. Okay, so those will definitely help you out. Buenas tardes, Big Sean TV. So vamos a continuar. So we've gone through, if you're joining us right now, we're talking about the strategies and keys to help us when it comes to one of the common issues, which is pronunciation. All right, pronunciation in Spanish is one of the most common issues that people run into when they're learning Spanish. So we gave out some ideas and some strategies that you want to work on. Number one, we said learn the phonetics. There's 10 important letters that you need to know in Espanol. There's also some rules according to the vowels that follow certain consonants. Um, you can find all of that. I have a link to a video in the description about learning to pronounce words in Espanol. You can check that out. So learn phonetics. That's probably the most important thing when it comes to pronunciation. Number two, record and listen to yourself, right? Number three, listen and repeat. You want to mimic the sounds or the intonations and the words, or perhaps your favorite artist or actress or actor, if you want to. you might, or rapper, singer, what have you, and practice mimicking the way they sound, and that's going to help you along the way as well. Number three, engage in conversation with native and fluent speakers. Want to do that as often as possible. That's going to help build your confidence as well as lower your anxiety. And then we said number four, right? Or is that number five? Yes, número cinco. Número cinco, we want to talk about using trabalenguas or tongue twisters. Okay, so you want to make sure you look those up and check those out. Okay, so let me take that off the screen there. We're going to keep moving here. We've got some additional ways to help you with your pronunciation. And this is more so into the technology aspect of it. You want to use language learning apps, right? That have a heavy emphasis on pronunciation and voice recognition technology. So there's some apps out there, some language learning apps that help you do that, as well as some of those language learning apps that will connect you with a language learning partner from that Spanish, from a particular Spanish speaking country. So there are some that are available that will help you out with that. Busu is one of those. I'm a firm believer of using Busu. So you can definitely check that out. That will help you with voice recognition. Our next advantage or key or strategy to helping us improve our pronunciation is learning the importance of stressed syllables slash accent marks, right? You want to make sure that you understand where to put the emphasis of a particular word on that correct letter, right? Because it can throw the word off if you don't pronounce it correctly, and it could absolutely mean something totally different. A key word is año and ano. Okay, if you don't know what the difference is, I advise you to look that up. Año and ano. Those are two different things, very different. So make sure you know when to use the inye and when to use inne. Okay, so that's a very important issue. Stressed syllables, as well as knowing how to hit the accent marks on certain words and how that affects your pronunciation. And then lastly, to improve our pronunciation, we want to make sure we sing along the Spanish song. Okay, that can also help with your pronunciation. If you know of a song, and you can do like people do all the time, karaoke, right? Just put the lyrics up to a favorite Spanish song or a favorite song in Spanish on your TV, on your phone. If you know of one that you're like, I really like this song, learn the lyrics and learn how to pronounce those lyrics. That helps in your pronunciation as well. And it helps you also learn the rhythm and intonation of the language and how it flows when it's accompanied by music. Okay, so that is our section on pronunciation. One of the most probably the most common issue many Spanish language learners come across in the beginning stages. Now, I also have available right now for ladies. I have a particular program and a course that I put together. It's 5 lessons where you actually can work on your pronunciation skills. I will have that link in the description below. But I guarantee you, if you focus in on this particular course, in 7 days, your pronunciation will be perfect. And can't forget about the gentlemen, los caballeros. We also had that available for you. We have it separated because men learn differently from women. And so we created two different paths to get us to that one spot, which is mastering our Spanish pronunciation. And so we've got those available for you. The links are going to be below. Check those out if you're in need of getting your Spanish pronunciation up to par. Okay, so let's get into number two, verb conjugation. This is right up under our pronunciation issues, right? People are like, "Ah, man, I need to learn this conjugating so that I can, be able to function in the language and have something to say." Um, okay, so Pooh Man says, "Is there an app or website for Spanish tongue twisters? Because once I hear the correct pronunciation, I remember it." There is not, but I'm pretty sure if you Google um, trabalenguas, right? And you can scroll up in the chat there, hopefully, and check out how I spell that. But if you say, you know, type in, 50 top top 50 trabalenguas, right? Or top 50 tongue twisters in Spanish. Okay, that may give you what you need. italki, you talk. Those are also some good um, language learning apps that you can use that will definitely help you out. All right, so back to conjugating, right? Verb conjugations are super important when it comes to being able to produce the language in Espanol, right? To produce the language, you want to be able to have a conversation, you got to know how to conjugate. So, what are some ways that we can improve on conjugating, right? So, numero uno, I would say engage in regular verb drill practice. Okay. Now, there are many ways to engage in this. If you caught the video that I showed during Amazon Prime Day, there were actually some flashcards that looked pretty phenomenal for people that were looking to improve their skills with conjugating. And if you didn't catch that out, I'll also link that video in the description below. You can check out those flashcards. There are also just techniques that you can do, right? You can simply, say out loud a verb. For example, let's just use hablar, right? And say you're a little bit past present tense, right? You don't have the issues of dealing with the present tense conjugation. You got that hammered down, right? You're ready to go. But say it gets into something like el pretérito, right? El pretérito simple or el pasado simple, and you need to learn those. I would just simply say out loud to myself, I would go through like a course of 3 to 5 verbs, right? And if we start with hablar, right? I would just go through hablé, hablaste, habló, right? Hablamos, hablaron, and hablaste if you're in España, right? If you're trying to learn Spanish. But I would just go through certain verbs and practice those verbs in the conjugation out loud. That's a simple and yet cheap and economical way that you can learn to conjugate better. Okay. There are also some written activities and exercises that you can do that will assist you in that. And I will definitely have those available coming up in August. Now that I'm back on this side of the planet, uh, coming up in August, we're going to start having our live lessons available for our members only groups, right? So we're going to be doing those live, and we'll be chopping those up and making them available to the public um, in some form or fashion, but we're going to dive deep into lessons, maybe an hour a day, to kind of help people with some of these strategies and techniques. And also, I almost forgot, I want you to make sure you check out, email me if you want to get in on the free weekly newsletter that will definitely, I did a test run. We're going to actually bring that out in August as well. So make sure you email me info@speakspanish.tv, and I will be also having some items available for you that will assist you in some of these things that we're talking about here. Okay, so I want to make sure that you are seeing those and having the opportunity to get those. Let me put my email address in here. Speak Spanish. Let's go here. Speak Spanish now TV, and I'm gonna put that into the chat as well as on the screen so that you all may have that. Email me if you want to get in on the um, weekly newsletter that we'll be bringing out, and I'll be giving some PDFs away, some free PDFs, activities, some strategies, things of that nature that can assist you on being able to better conjugate, better pronounce words, things of that nature. Now, let's get back into some of the reasons or some of the keys or strategies that we can utilize to become better at conjugating, right? So we talked about engaging in regular verb drill practice, right? Um, all verbs follow certain patterns, right? That is one of the things. All verbs follow a certain pattern, whether it's a regular verb or irregular verb. They all have certain patterns that they follow. And so you want to make sure that if you are practicing and engaging in this drill, these verbal drill practices on a daily basis, you're going to start to see those patterns and start to connect. Oh, yeah, AR verbs, ER verbs, IR verbs, right? Yogo verbs, right? We've got reflexive verbs. Those are the things that you do if you continue to engage on a daily basis in this verb drill practice. You're definitely going to get better at it. You want to learn the regular verb patterns for all AR, ER, and IR verbs. Okay. Learn the regular verb patterns first. That is probably if you are struggling with what ending goes where. Okay. If that's what's an issue with you, you want to definitely jump into that and drill it. You don't have to do all of them in one day, right? You might want to break it up and say, I'm just going to do the yo form of AR, ER, and IR verbs. I'm just going to do the singular forms, the yo form, the to form, the el, ea, usted form. Whatever way you want to strategize to get you accomplishing your goal in becoming a better person or better Spanish speaker with conjugating your verbs, by all means do so. Then you move on to your irregular verbs, right? Your yogo verbs, your sandal verbs, your boot verbs, right? And you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. We're going to definitely be getting into those coming up in August. So we talked about drill practice. We talked about learning the regular verb patterns and then moving into the irregular verbs patterns for conjugating. You also want to make sure you utilize flashcards and any other drills or techniques to improve your efficiency in conjugating. Okay, so make sure you jump into those. Reading, believe it or not, reading and listening, those skills there, reading and listening skills, are also going to help you improve your conjugating skills, right? It helps in your exposure to conjugation in real life context. Whether you're reading something, that's real life, right? If I'm listening to the news or I'm listening to a movie or a TV show, right? Those are going to help you in real life context understand the endings of the verbs. And when you hear them, oh, you're like, oh, yeah, that's the nosotros form, right? Or that's the ustedes form, or the ellas ustedes form, right? So you want to make sure you are utilizing the opportunity for reading and listening. Some other ways that you can look into improving your conjugation skills: using online quizzes and games for reinforcement. Quizlet, old school, but it's effective. Okay, games there. You've got some additional websites that are out. Look it. You've got um, what else? Oh man, uh, there's a gang of them. But you can type in just online quizzes. I think even SpanishDictionary.com or SpanishDict.com, DICT.com. They also have some practice there. But Quizlet, Look it, SpanishDict.com, Word Reference. Those are good websites. And you can just type in like online quizzes in Spanish and see what pops up. And they're always going to be available for you for free. A lot of those. You can definitely utilize those for free for working with your conjugation if you are working from an online standpoint. Okay. Um, let's look at another one of the other ways that you can look at learning and utilizing the most common irregular verbs is going to help you conjugate better. What do I mean by that? We're talking about using verbs. Hola, will. What are we talking about when we say learning and utilizing the most common irregular verbs. We're talking about verbs like ser, estar, tener, querer, right? Venir, right? Some of the common verbs that are utilized in language, poner, right? Well, not really irregular, but the yo form is. But you want to find out, and you can always, once again, Google, right? Most common irregular verbs, and it'll bring up a list, right? It may be five, it may be 25, maybe 50. Okay. But it's going to be a list that's going to help you, and you want to tackle each verb separately. And once you've mastered that verb, then you move to the next verb, right? And once you know the conjugations, start creating with the statement or with the conjugations, right? I want to say something with the yo form. I want to say something with the to form. El ella usted form. Nosotros. Work your way up to creating sentences, statements, questions. Okay. Old school. Old school moment right here. Using conjugation tables. Maybe you remember that from taking Spanish in high school or in college, right? Using conjugation tables, they definitely will help you. Okay. Because some people are visual learners, right? And so conjugation tables are going to help those of us that are visual learners. And those flashcards that we talked about on Amazon Prime Day, they actually had some where they had conjugation tables on those. So you want to make sure you take a look at that. I will add that video. I did not, but I will add that video into the description so that you can check that out, or you can just go through my channel and find it on your own. Biggest thing though, when it comes to conjugating, you've got to work on memorization. Okay. Memorizing the different forms of these verbs. You've got to do it. It's something that people say, "Oh, you don't need to memorize." Yes, you've got to know, and you've got to know it like you know the back of your hand, right? You got to know all the different forms of the verbs. So you want to work on that as well. Once you get to a point where you're working really well with the conjugation of these verbs, I would suggest that you go ahead and start writing, like we said, creating with the language, right? Writing stories, essays, journal entries. Practice using a variety of verbs as well. All right. Once you learn those patterns, right? We talked about learning the patterns, right? So once you learn the patterns of regular verbs, all right. Once you learn the patterns of the irregular verbs, start using those in a variety of ways, as well as tenses, right? If you are mastered the present tense, go ahead and move on to the simple past or el pretérito. Then move on to el imperfecto, right? And then you can move on to, future. And then we can move into a different mood of subjuntivo as opposed to indicativo. Now, these are grammar phrases that I'm talking and spitting out at you, but realistically, you can function with just really knowing how to use the present tense, how to use the past tense, and well, how to use the preterite in the imperfect tense. You can function fairly well in the Spanish language. And then, really you to put the icing on the cake, if you can learn the subjunctive mood, that's going to actually be really all you pretty much need to have a conversation in Espanol. All right. So to wrap this thing up about conjugating, the last end all be all thing that I would tell you is private tutoring or private classes or small classes can definitely give you that advantage that you might be looking for. It's going to set you up to provide the individual attention that you need. Okay, having these private classes, the tutoring sessions, or the small classes, there you're going to be able to have lessons that are tailored to fit your needs, right? And then we're also going to be able to have immediate feedback from that tutor or from that teacher, right? So if you have the means to do so, I suggest you do that. It's going to accelerate your learning that much faster if you have that person that can give you constant and immediate feedback. Okay. So let's move on to our next one, number and gender agreement. I'm not going to give you a whole lot on these because this is something, yeah, there you go. Will ser estar, ir, and hacer. If you learn those, you are good to go. Good to go. Absolutely. Absolutely. So now looking at number and gender agreement, this is realistically, it's not that difficult. If you think about the phrase, there is a phrase that I always use, right? And I've said it in a number of videos that I've talked about number and gender agreement. I will also add this video that I made to the description so that you can see that. But the phrase goes like this: always remember to match number and gender. Always remember to match number and gender. Okay, so what do we mean by that? Unlike English, Spanish nouns are gendered, and the adjectives and the articles that accompany them must agree in number and gender, right? El, la, los, las, right? Masculino, femenino, right? Those matter. The gender matters. Okay. Um, it can be confusing in the beginning, but if you always remember to match the number, and when I say number, I mean singular versus plural, right? We're talking about more than one versus one, right? If you've got one, that means that your adjective has to be singular, right? If the item that you're talking about is singular, that means your number has to be, or that means your adjective has to be singular as well as plural, and your adjective must be plural. They must agree. Okay. Everything across the board must agree. If you can understand that rule, the use of gender and a number agreement will not be difficult for you. The biggest thing is that you always remember to match number and gender. Okay, so how are some ways? What are some ways that we can do better with learning or mastering number and gender agreement? I would suggest a couple of things. We've got understanding the basics, right? You want to understand the basics. First, get a firm grasp on the basic rules of number and gender agreement in Spanish, and learn that nouns, articles, adjectives, and pronouns need to agree. That's the basics, right? That's your foundation. Then you can practice with flashcards, right? You can use color-coded notes. Okay. That is another option for you. Reading and listening. Once again, that's another thing. Online quizzes and exercises, matching those things up like memory. Okay. Writing in Spanish, that's going to help you. And then using visual aids, seeing that, those charts, those diagrams that are going to help you to understand. Oh, this goes with that, right? Saying it out loud, right? A lot of these things are going to be repetitive, but we want to make sure that you understand that everything revolves around the same thing as far as giving us the strategies and the keys. If you do all of these for each one of these issues that we're talking about, the pronunciation, we're talking about the conjugations, we're talking about the number and gender agreement. If you utilize these activities and these strategies, they're going to help you excel that much faster with the language. Okay. And then for some of us, actually teaching someone else what you know, right? Because reinforcement and repetition is key when learning a language. And so if you are doing that, if you're teaching somebody what you know, it's going to make it that much easier for you to understand and to utilize in conversation. Okay. So you definitely want to check that out. And then, of course, you always want to be able to get um with a study group, right? To practice that. All right, Will says explain la. All right, give me some more, Will. Give me some more. Because la, first and foremost, la simply means the, right? Singular, feminine, the, la mujer. Right. So feminine, right? Singular. Okay. Mujer being woman, right? Let's put that up there on the screen. La mujer being woman, right? So la mujer. Now, the thing is this: La mujer, the woman, the lady. Okay. Una mujer, a woman, a lady. Okay. That is going to be the difference there. Okay. Now, if it's plural, we just add S, just like you do in English, right? You add S to la, las. Now, when we end with a consonant like the word mujer, we've got to add es. Las mujeres. Okay. The ladies, the women. Okay. So simple things that we can do, and if you follow those rules, if you can set up a parameter or a foundation with some of these, the ones that follow become easier and easier. It's just repetition and practice. Okay, so let's move to our next topic. We're only doing about, I think, 5 of these. Pronouns. Pronouns, we're talking about subject pronouns, possessive pronouns, reflexive pronouns, indirect pronouns, indirect object pronouns, direct object pronouns, right? These are probably one of the most confusing things because we don't necessarily have those in English. Not all of these, right? But we kind of do, but we don't. And I'll take that back. We don't have the indirect object pronouns like the way that we have them in Spanish, or the direct object pronouns, or the reflexive pronouns. They're similar. We just don't oftentimes use them as much in English. So you've got to get the basics down for what pronouns mean what, right? What are my subject pronouns or my personal pronouns, right? We're talking about I, you, he, she, we, they. Okay. What are reflexive pronouns? I've got a song that we'll be learning in our members only class that we use to help memorize what the reflexive pronouns are. We're talking about myself, yourself, himself, herself, their selves, ourselves. We also did a live class on that already. And so if you want to take a look at reflexive pronouns and how they work, you can check that out as well. We actually did a two-part series on that, so you can definitely check that out. Um, Indirect and direct, there's a little bit more that goes into those, but once you understand the difference between what an indirect is literally what the word says. It indirectly receives the action of a verb. Okay, what do we mean by that? I'll give you a simple statement or sentence here. John kicked the ball to Mary. Okay. John kicked the ball to Mary. All right, cool. Gracias, señor. Gracias, Will. Um, thank you for that super chat right there, brother. So absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we understand is this. Um, we have John kicked the ball to Mary, right? I think that's the girl's name I just used. John kicks the ball to Mary. The action, right? The action is your verb, right? So what is John doing? He's kicking the ball. Indirectly, Mary is receiving. I'm off the camera. Mary is receiving the ball because John kicked it. Okay. So the action, who's doing the action? John is, right? John's kicking the ball, right? The ball is the direct object because it's directly receiving the action. And then Mary is indirectly receiving the action because the ball is coming to her. So if you can understand the concept, the mindset of that, that's what's going to help you become better at indirect and direct objects. And I'm also, per request, I'll be making a video on that, um, specifically helping out with direct and indirect object pronouns, because someone mentioned that to me in our last live. And so I will be going through and working on that. All right, so let's move into the last thing, mood and tense selection. Okay, let's make sure we understand this. And this is not for your beginner, because if you are a beginner in the language, excuse me, we want you to focus specifically on the indicative mood. All right. The indicative mood. What is the indicative mood? The indicative mood is used to state facts. Okay. Statements that are actually verbatim is what it is, right? That, just think of it like that. It's a fact. It's something that is definitely your thought, your perception. It is what it is. Okay. Indicative mood. That's what you focus on in your first couple of lessons, right? That's going to be, and when I say first couple, we're talking about 20-ish, 25-ish, because indicative mood is large, right? You want to think about it as an umbrella, okay? The indicative mood. And then we have another mood, which is we have a few other, we have the imperative and we have the subjunctive mood. If you're a beginner, you just want to focus on the indicative mood. And that is what we speak in normal, actual, factual concepts and conversations, right? I'm going to the store. I'm eating chicken. I'm eating a hamburger. I'm dancing with my friends, right? I'm driving the car. You're telling us factual information. That is the indicative mood. That gives us the conjugations, the endings for our AR, ER, and IR verbs, the ones that everybody kind of knows. If you've been working with me or you've been studying Spanish for a while, your o, as, a, amos, an, or your o, es, e, hemos, en, or emos, en for IR verbs. Those are the endings in the indicative mood. Okay. So, how do I get better at that? There's a few ways, right? And they kind of fall into place with everything else that we've been talking about. Drill practices, right? And that goes back to our conjugations. Okay. So follow those steps, what we talked about earlier with verb conjugations. Tense selection. Okay. Tense selection, where we're trying to decide on our tenses. And this is most specifically for people that deal with the issues of, should I use el pretérito or el imperfecto? That is where we find a common disconnect. All right. Understanding when to use the preterite tense and when to use the imperfect tense. If you are not at that level yet, don't worry about it. Okay. But knowing when to use the preterite tense and knowing when to use the imperfect tense, there are some things that actually give it away. Keywords, right? Yesterday, last night, this morning, this afternoon, right? Those are keywords that tell me I need to use the preterite tense. Keywords for el imperfecto. Every day we used to blah, blah, blah. Every morning, right? We blah, blah, blah. We always used to blah, 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 right? Using those words like always, this, every morning, every day, that shows repetition. It shows habitual actions. And when you have a habitual action, you use el imperfecto. So we're going to jump into getting deeper and diving deeper into understanding when to use the preterite versus the imperfect tense, when to use the indicative versus the subjunctive. That's for our more advanced learners. We'll work on that way down the road if we have to. But we're going to start from the basics and make sure that you can at least communicate, right? At least communicate in Espanol from the beginning stages, and making sure that we are able to express our basic statements, right? We want to be able to do that. So, once again, I'm glad that you joined me here today for finding the keys to grammar, mastering our grammar. Okay, so stay tuned. We'll come back next week with another addition to this. We want to make sure we're adding on and building, right? We're building our strategies. And coming up this week, this upcoming week, maybe like Wednesday, we're going to be doing our first live class in a long time. We're going to be jumping into a class. This is going to be in our members only. That information will be dropping on Monday, not tomorrow, day after tomorrow, right? Lunes. That information will be coming to you live and direct. So stay tuned. Look in the community post for that. If you did not check out today's short, it was something kind of fun for me to get back into. Make sure you check that out. It's talking about guess the word, and we're doing the NFL edition today. We're going to be doing guess the word for the next couple of days here, just to kind of get us back in the swing of things when we are learning the language. We've had a 2-week break. We're getting ready to jump back into this. All right. So once again, gracias por su atención. All right. And I will see you in the next section. Soy Profe Don Omar. Nos vemos.